God is sovereign over our salvation. Joseph is established as a leader of the world. He's brought through numerous trials. He's brought through numerous problems. But here, God has established him as the leader. Now, let's get a bigger picture of what's happening. We've all seen either the movie Prince of Egypt or you've read Exodus. I'm assuming everyone in the room. We know where this is going. God has sent Joseph into Egypt not only so that he can save his family from the famine, but you see, Egypt's this nice little incubator. The Egyptians don't like foreigners, especially foreigners who herd sheep. They think sheep and goats are dirty, and so they don't have anything to do with the Israelites. When Israel comes in, they are given the choicest lot of land because Joseph's in charge. He sets off the land of Goshen, the rich land, so that the Israelites, they grow in number, they grow in power, and they're even going to grow in wealth. See, this is a perfect plan of God. God uses Egypt, Israel's greatest enemy, to protect them for a season so that God can make them numerous. He said this is how the whole plan works. And then so God can show that He is the mighty God, the one true God, and the delivering God. It gets better. Because God not only gives them the most choice land, God only makes them great in number. But then God, after Pharaoh forgets Joseph, He hardens Pharaoh's heart. He allows Pharaoh to abuse his people, to enslave Israel, to kill their firstborn, so that God can wrestle Egypt into submission to prove that all those other gods they claim are gods, they're not true gods. He is the one true God. He wrestles Egypt to prove to Israel, I am your God, Yahweh, the one and only, the deliverer. It's a bigger picture. God is orchestrating all of this for His big plan of salvation. Of course, we see the same sovereignty in Jesus Christ. Again, we have to go to the cross. God uses Judas Iscariot, the betrayer, the priests and the Pharisees who plotted to kill Jesus, Pilate in his mortal dilemma, the crowd calling for Barabbas. He uses all of these sinners to bring about His plan of salvation. See, the beauty of Romans 8, when it says nothing can separate us from the Father's love. Romans 8 also says nothing can separate us from the Father's love. The beauty of this is that I typically think it's always in the present, but we can look throughout all of Scripture, and we can see that nothing has stopped God from accomplishing His purpose. He's never acting and then reacting. He's always intentionally bringing out His one plan from before time began. This is comforting, friends. We must trust Him in the midst of our trouble to bring about His good will. Suffering is painful for a season. Some of us have gone through great suffering. Some of us have gone through little suffering. In the midst of suffering that you've either gone through or are in or will be in, you must trust God. You must look to God who orchestrates things like this story with Joseph, like the cross of Jesus Christ. And look at it and realize that God always works all things for the good of His people. All things work together for us. He is good. His intentions will be good, even if painful for a season. Be wary of straying from the narrow path, because He will use discipline to bring us back. But when He is disciplining us, we have to ask, what is God's good purpose in this? Friends, one of the truest marks of a Christian is this: they persevere in suffering. Paul calls us to not avoid suffering, to not flee from suffering, to not avoid it at all cost, but to rejoice in it. Paul delighted in suffering because it allowed him to experience the cross of Christ in a new way. He had a divine perspective on suffering. It wasn't just something that was happening to him that was meaningless and hurtful. No, it was God's hand in his life bringing about more godliness, more love, and more obedience. Friends, if you're suffering this morning, don't hide it. Just as I've been preaching, do not hide your sin. The glory of the gospel should cause us to confess our sin. The glory of the gospel should cause us to talk about our suffering. We think there's something wrong with telling people, no, things aren't well. I have this physical pain. I've been hurt by this person. I am going through this trial. God has intended us to be a church, to be united, to talk about our trials and our sufferings together so that we can point each other to Christ. Now, the real sad truth is that many of us have been hurt in the Church of Christ. Many of us have either been hurt by an under-shepherd or another body. That's fairly, it's difficult and discouraging. We should expect sinners to sin against us. But we should also hope that the church will obey its calling to love one another and to consider others greater than themselves. But the truth is a lot of Christians, well, they don't live out their calling, they live out their sinful nature. Friends, we have to commit to loving Christ and obeying Him as His body, as members of His body, submitting to His headship, suffering together, weeping with one another, and rejoicing with one another. I pray that as we, I hope, are all challenged by God's power, that we will reflect and pray and consider our sufferings and how God will use them for our good and His glory. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. God, you are infinite in your love, your power. You are infinite in your ability to accomplish your will. I pray that we will be challenged to pursue this, to pursue a clearer, better understanding of who you are and what you're doing in our life. To stop trying to flee from suffering, but see how it can be used for our good, so that we love you more. It can be used for your glory because it's part of your plan. How we can participate in the sufferings of Christ. Father, who did not even spare His own Son, do not spare us. I pray that we